Trump seems pretty serious about this.
Well, hi once again, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. It's always a pleasure to visit with you about ag-related topics. Today, I am pleased to welcome aboard Matthew Kruse, president of Comstock Investments, and he joins us from the U.S. this week. He's back from his travels to Brazil for several weeks. And lots of stuff to talk about, Matthew. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. We normally talk about South American crop conditions and everything at this point. But we seem to have some overriding things right now. And there's all this tariff talk going on between the U.S. and Mexico and Canada and China and just all sorts of countries. Can you kind of walk us through this from your perspective? What are you watching right now?
This South American weather is still important and ongoing, but it's kind of taken a back seat, at least temporarily, for this week. Going into the weekend, or at least on Sunday, the chatter was starting to build that Trump was going to enact these tariffs on Mexico and Canada. And, I don't know that it was a huge surprise, because obviously Trump has been well known for, using tariffs to get what he wants. And so the market actually collapsed in the overnight trade Sunday night. But by Monday morning, the markets are getting whipsawed and came right back, because then it was announced that, Mexico and Canada were kind of conceding to what he wanted. And it's at least temporarily. They didn't necessarily cancel those tariffs, right? They postponed them for 30 days, as we understand it. So I think the market's kind of looking at it that cooler heads are going to prevail, but the risk is not necessarily completely gone away. And so now the focus today, I think, is China, right? That Trump is supposed to be meeting with President Xi. And so it seems to be, changing and being updated by the minute here, that, we're kind of waiting on pins and needles to see what happens there. And so, those tariffs have been enacted for quite a while, and it kind of seems like, from what everything that I've seen in research, China never really did make good on those initial phase one plans, and phase two has been a long time in the making here. And so, the market's obviously going to be pretty jittery at that, but I think it's maybe not that Trump is bluffing, but I think the market's seeing that he is kind of using it as a negotiation tactic. And so far, the countries have been backing off and doing whatever it is that he wants. I don't know that we all have a good understanding of what exactly he wants, but and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with agriculture. It's probably other issues related to our national interests, like immigration and fentanyl imports, things of that nature. And so, but we have one chart that was just kind of showing the importance of the trade with Mexico and Canada. One thing that happened when we had the trade wars with China is we had to start selling our grain elsewhere. And so Mexico has been slowly increasing as an important trade partner with the United States. And I think they almost purchased close to 1 billion bushels of corn from us last year. And so there were some 300 million bushels that was kind of left in limbo here, that was unshipped yet, had been purchased but unshipped to Mexico. And so that was, I think a big reason why you saw corn prices collapse here in the Sunday overnight trade, but now they've come back and retesting new highs. And so, but you can see here, Mexico and Canada combined, represent like 20% or so. But yeah, most says more than a quarter of U.S. imports come from Mexico and Canada, and so they're important to us in terms of our trade.
Well, let's take a look at another one here. Now, this is kind of an overall view. You may have to explain this one a little bit here, because it's a whole bunch of little lines, squiggly lines. Everyone is a different color, but you're talking about a whole bunch of countries right now.
Yeah, a lot of squiggly lines there. So, we've always understood from the Trump administration that he was focused on narrowing these trade deficits, and China, which is the top line there, has the largest trade deficit, and it looks like it's been narrowing here in the last couple decades, but it also shows if that's our purpose, to narrow these trade deficits, you look at Canada and Mexico are those two lines toward the bottom. And so while they're important trade partners, they don't have near as big a trade deficits as what we have with China. And so that's why it's a little confusing why we're picking a fight with them, I suppose, and it has more to do probably with just getting what we want on other issues. And so I think that's probably what you're going to see in the future, that anytime a country doesn't maybe give us what we want, they could probably expect some tariffs being slapped on them.
Interesting stuff. Well, here's a look at Mexico, what we buy from Mexico. Now, walk us through this one here. From your perspective there, do you think that's changed very much?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, there you could probably add a lot of things to this list. Obviously, I think a lot of fruits and vegetables and things like that come from Mexico as well. Avocados. I know the U.S. loves their avocados, and a lot of those are all coming from Mexico. Car parts are coming from Mexico. They're maybe assembled here, but a lot of the parts are made down there in Mexico. And so I know that makes a big difference.
Now, of course, everybody knows a lot of the car manufacturing plants have facilities down there, and maybe that could be at risk. Who knows if these tariffs go into effect? Now, a similar deal occurs in Canada, but we have a different list of things that come from Canada. This is interesting.
Well, they actually, we put these tariffs on Canada of 25%, but they left one commodity off there. And I'll take a guess which one they left off: crude oil. And so we are highly dependent on, I don't know if dependent is the right word, but they're shipping us a lot of crude oil. And that was certainly going to cause a lot of volatility in the crude market had we put those tariffs on that. And so a lot of times you hear these blanketed statements, oh, you got 25% tariffs on Canada. Well, which specific commodities or products is it? It's maybe not blanketed across everything. And so I understood that they actually left crude oil off that list.
Interesting that, remember years ago where they had the XL pipeline. And then when the last administration got in, they made them just totally drop everything. I mean, they had a, 2/3 build or more. Now, that would have been Canadian oil that would have transited the U.S. down to the Gulf, correct?
That's what I understood. But yeah, it didn't ultimately get done.
So that really wouldn't belong to the U.S. That would still remain Canadian oil until it got on the ship, wouldn't it?
Yep, correct.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, okay. So that wouldn't have really counted as an import. We just would have been almost getting like a taxi fee, I guess, if you will. Interesting. So aluminum coming out of there. Lots of petroleum products, and I understand maybe even uranium coming out of Canada. So, yeah, lots of stuff.
Lumber, I think, is another big item, too.
Oh, yeah.
Lumber is a big part of it. And, of course, housing prices are dependent on lumber. Maybe close to a third of a new home is the cost of lumber.
Paper products.
Yeah.
Toilet paper. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the South American discussion. Here we have a map of what is going on here this week for moisture, and I see lots of red on the map. What does that mean on this one?
Well, yeah, it's just the weekly forecast and what we see. And again, it kind of shows that the southern part of Brazil, there specifically in Rio Grande do Sul in Argentina, is still leaning drier. Now, they've been getting some scattered rains in Argentina. But I think that's another reason that markets are trading the way they are right now, is they're kind of looking for more clarity on the crop damage that's been happening specifically in Argentina. They've been getting some scattered showers, but it's really hasn't been enough that's been drought breaking. And it's been extremely hot, triple digit temperatures. And so that's just increasing the evaporation rates and kind of feeding on itself. And they're entering a phase where every day, every week, that the precipitation needs are increasing. And so you can kind of see here that at least this week, we expect to see heavy showers for the remaining parts of the bulk of Brazil. And so it's just kind of more of the same. Just the weather pattern is on repeat, where Um, they plenty of rain to the north, for the majority of Brazil's growing regions, but then lack of precipitation in the south.
You don't see too much in the east, but they really don't produce too many soybeans there, do they?
And not in that east area where it's opened up. No, that's a pretty dry, desolate area. There's some irrigation there, but no, that's where you're seeing that eastern portion. There's not much production there.
So explain how this works. Now, where the red areas are on the screen, you and I have talked before that, normally during the soybean growing season, hey, that'd be great. But it's not helping to get the corn in the ground, the safrinha corn, is it?
No, I mean that's the other issue, right? It's causing a delay in the soybean harvest, and which has been, of course, to get the safrinha corn planted, they got to get the soybeans out first, and so Mato Grosso is quite a bit behind. Maybe 10% behind where they were a year ago. However, Paraná is ahead of schedule. That's further in the south, and so they Paraná is not as big. They're the second largest soybean producing state, but not as big as Mato Grosso. But when you combine the whole country, I think they're actually on schedule in the case of the corn planting, because of Paraná is as far along as they are. But in the case of the soybean planting, they're still behind schedule, and a lot of that has to do with Mato Grosso. And so, at the end of the day, it's probably more important what happens in Mato Grosso, and we got a slide later that will show you why, just because they're so large.
So what are we looking at here? This says March 4th. That's a ways out there.
Looking out 30-day forecasts, what the anomaly says, and it does show that rainfall is going to pick up in the south, and it's going to start to ease off in the north where you see those red areas. And so it doesn't mean that there isn't rain in those northern areas. It just means that it's going to start to rain below average, which, to be honest, is probably a good thing for farmers. They can speed up the soybean harvest and get that safrinha corn in. And so the market, I think, is going to be really sensitive to that right now, making sure that ideally they'd like to get as much as 70% of their safrinha corn in by February 20th. And I think they're going to be hard pressed to get that done. And so I think the market is kind of privy to that. That's why we're trading up 7.5 cents right at the moment.
Of course, that's because they're worried about the other end, right? They want the crop to make it before it gets into their, what do you call it, the dry season?
Yeah, the dry season, starts to build in April, and rainfall slows down in April. It kind of comes to an end in May, and June, July, August there isn't anything. And so, there's some of the producers that planted early or short season varieties. I mean, they already got some corn in the ground, and so they'll have a full season, by the time April rolls around. But if you plant late February or in March, that won't be the case. And so you should expect much lower yields the later you plant.
Second crop corn production in Brazil. This would be your safrinha corn. And walk us through this one. As you mentioned, Mato Grosso is the key player here.
Yes. You can see how it stands out there. So again, this is just the second crop corn production for Brazil, not their overall corn production. And so, but it's the most important. It's the largest. It represents about 78% of Brazil's corn output. And you can see how important Mato Grosso is, that 45 million metric tons. It's almost half. It's larger than those next 5 states combined. And so, even though Paraná is ahead of schedule, Mato Grosso is so large that, that's really where it comes down to. And so, so that's just to give viewers an idea of where all that corn, second crop corn production is coming from.
Now, what sets Mato Grosso apart? Is it better soil? Is it a better climate? Why so much right there?
The rainy season is a little bit longer because it's closer to the Amazon, I think, closer to those jet streams where it catches more rain. And so they start earlier. They can start planting in September, and the bulk of their soybean planting ideally goes in October. Where other parts of Brazil, like where our farm is in Minas Gerais, we're about a month later. And so just the fact they, can get their crops in sooner, gives them a couple more months, and doesn't give them a lot of excess time, but it gives them a couple more months to try and fit in a second crop. And so it's maybe not a full crop like what we would consider here in the United States, but it's just become more of a standard practice to almost a rotational crop, right? That they maybe only get 90 bushels per acre. But by planting that, and then they feel like it's still worth it because their soybeans the following year will perform that much better.
Well, we had heard this morning that, with all this tariff talk flying around, that now China was going to impose a 15% tariff on things like U.S. coal and LNG. I did not hear any talk about soybeans, for example, or corn, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But, one has to wonder if that'll be waiting in the wings or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we don't know. Perhaps in the case of Mexico and Canada, cooler heads prevailed and we dodged a bullet there. Trump seems pretty serious about this. And so, it's more up to the countries if they want to push back. And it looks like China is more willing to push back and create this. And the longer these tariffs last, the more turmoil and economic damage it can cause to our economy. It looks like in the case of Mexico and Canada, that's going to be short-lived.
So strength in soybeans early today, is it realistic to expect that they can go very far, though, if Brazilian harvest is ramping up the way it is?
I have a hard time seeing it. I hope they do. I mean, they're doing great. They're up 14 right now. They're actually trading. They're up above the 200-day moving average for the first time, and I don't even know how long. And so that's a good sign. We'll have to see if they close up above it. We're doing this in the middle of trading hours right now, but yeah, I think a lot of stops are getting hit right now, and so some of it's technical trading. I think it's also some of the dryness in Argentina. I think as well. I don't know that the market fully understands what the crop damage has happened there yet. So I think the yield loss is a little bit more than what the market is expecting. And so it's looking for more clarity there as well, in addition to what's happening with the tariffs.
Absolutely. Well, all kinds of stuff going on, and we'll try and keep everybody posted on what the latest developments are each and every day on these podcasts. So thanks for the help there, Matthew. Good to visit with you once again, and I appreciate the update. And we'll talk with everybody soon. Just a quick reminder, make sure you check out, if you haven't registered already, make sure you check out our upcoming Family Farm Masterclass in Des Moines, Iowa. That will be held on February 21st and 22nd. I'll be there. Matthew will be there. Our whole crew will be there. And we'll have a whole bunch of well-known speakers. And it'll be a 2-day session full of great information. Keynote speaker, by the way, Willie Robertson of Duck Dynasty. So anyway, make sure you check that out. Go to Comstock.com and then check on the masterclass link at the top of the page for more information than to register. Thanks again, Matthew. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Matthew Kruse, president of Comstock Investments. That'll do it for this episode. For producer Brianne Jenkins, I'm Marlin Bohling. We'll catch you next time here on the Comstock channel. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and or options is substantial, and each investor and or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.